One thing I like about the new Ducktales series is how it plays around with some previous ideas and stories, and that's what we're going to talk about today, namely in the stories of Terra of the Terra-Firmians. So welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank. So I'm not so much an elitist to think that every take on a classic story is less valid than another, or it's usually just different. As a fan of the original DuckTales series, who then got into the comics, I can't really claim that much elitism either way, but I do know what I like. And in these stories, I know what is different about most ideas in an episode in regards to how they work. So that's what I wanted to do here, focus on what makes the story ideas different from their other iterations. I wanted to start with Terra the Terra-Firmians because, at least to me, it was one of the examples as to how different this series was from the original. Minus the pilot, oddly enough. Well, not the pilot. The Atlantis episode, we'll just call that one. And we'll go into that one another time. So the premise of Terra the Terra-Firmians is really a story with two parts. One part is Hugh and Webby argue about the existence of the Terra-Firmians, and the other is Lena and Beakling's back and forth, and this ultimately fuels and drives the story from a character and overarching story standpoint. And it works. The problem is that the Terra-Firmians, the monster of the week, get relegated to just the monster of the week. So like, hey, they're here, and that's sort of it. Sort of think about the episode of Doctor Who called Can You Hear Me? But sort of changed a bit. So Can You Hear Me is really like, hey, there are these monsters, or in this case gods, who really get into your head, and the whole point of that for us, the viewer, was not really to see them, but to see these bigger issues that Yaz, Ryan, and Graham have. And that takes more precedent over anything else in the story. And that's sort of true with Terra the Terra-Firmians, because the Terra-Firmians don't matter. This episode is really about us understanding Huey and Webby's dynamic. It's about understanding Lena's grand plan and Lena's sort of conflicted behavior in this. And at this point, we don't know that she isn't really who she thinks she is, let alone who she's convincing everyone else that she is. So there's that. All of that is a bit more important than whether or not the Terra-Firmians exist or don't exist. And we get payoff to that, but it really doesn't quite matter, at least when compared to the originals. So before we go to the originals, let's go back to my version of the original. So before this story, there was an episode of the original DuckTales series called Earthquake, and it was one of my favorite episodes as a kid, and I still kind of do love it. It sort of has a lot of what I do like. It's got Scrooge, it's got the boys, there's a Gyro cameo, Scrooge is grouchy, and the Money Bin. I just love seeing the Money Bin in different ways it's portrayed across the original series. It very rarely is the exact same each time. But anyway, in the episode Earthquake, Scrooge is concerned about earthquakes, and namely how they can destroy his money bin. So he calls Gyro Gearloose in, who tells him that the best way to prevent destruction is to install a giant shock absorber in the center of the fault line that runs into the money bin. And this is sort of exactly what Gyro does. It's like, well, how about the most bombastic idea possible? I need a great way to clean underneath my furniture. Well, how about instead of like something that levitates it, or just, gets underneath those corners better, how about I just create a ray that moves it from one place to the next? That was an episode. It was a really great episode. The shock absorber is about to be placed in, and the workers run out claiming they've heard voices, to which Scrooge and the boys investigate, which leads to the discovery of the Terra-Firmians. And they find out that the Terra-Firmians are the cause of earthquakes, and Scrooge says, well, we have to stop them, so we have to take their trophy for their big game, and that leads to a whole chase, which leads to the money bin being destroyed, at least the money being taken out of it, and the Terra-Firmians don't realize what they've done. Like, you know what, we hate this stuff, let's put it back in. And luckily Scrooge lost his top hat down here, so we'll make the top hat our trophy, and then we'll go to California. It's weird how they said it, but whatever. Now, that episode was based off the Uncle Scrooge story Land Beneath the Ground. It was written by Karl Barks, and the story is pretty much the same, but instead of Gyro, it is Donald who suggests digging underground to find the fault lines. Most stories will usually be just Scrooge, Donald, and the boys. The original DuckTales cartoon was the one that decided to remove Donald from the series, mainly because Donald was a bit more popular at the time, and he might have taken away from what they were trying to do. But anyway, for the most part, the story happens the same way. The workers run out, and the story from a progression standpoint is pretty much the same. Hey, we find the Terra-Firmians. Hey, we gotta stop what they're doing, and boop boop a doop. Now, let's sort of break down what these three stories do differently. So when I talk about the Terra-Firmians, I know that the episode does very little with the Terra-Firmians themselves. That's actually the biggest difference between all three of these stories. Mostly it's Webby talking about them, and we don't see them until the end of the episode. Earthquake is slightly different in that regard, and so is Land Beneath the Ground, with the former focusing more on the surface level idea of the Terra-Firmians, what they do, make earthquakes, and Scrooge stopping them. The latter goes more in depth with the Terra-Firmians themselves, explaining, how they can speak English, how the Terries and the Fermians make earthquakes, how vast and expansive their culture is, even how to tell a Terry from a Fermi. Earthquake set the Terra-Firmians to be sort of unknowingly making earthquakes. In other words, they sort of know that, hey, we cause earthquakes, but they don't quite know about the repercussions, and they don't really care about it, whereas in Land Beneath the Ground, it makes it clear that they're totally aware of what happens and use the news that they hear from the germanium or that hears radio broadcasts about the quakes to make both, to sort of understand exactly how big of an impact they're having. In other words, how big is it on the Richter scale? They use that to sort of motivate them to do better, and they even sort of, there's a bit of deviousness to them. They're sort of very set on making, hey, we probably can't have those ducks, leaving here and telling them about us. Both Earthquake and Land Beneath the Ground really do focus on making more of an adventure out of the outing and exploring landscapes and pretty much this underground world, whether it be in Land Beneath the Ground or an Earthquake, feels like we've somehow left our world for one so close yet so vastly different from our own. It feels very Doctor Who in that way. Terror of the Terra-Firmians is a great character piece because it does focus on characters and motivations, and it does sort of push the story forward, but it's always been about the adventure and going to a different place, and that's something that I don't quite think the reboot sort of nails. And I want to get into that a bit more when we discuss the first proper adventure that happened in the DuckTales reboot in Escape to/from Atlantis. Anyway, with that in mind, we'll bring this video to a close here. If you're new to the Bucket Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, check out some other videos, smash the thumbs up button. I'll catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.